again guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video we are taking a look at the recently released FS Realistic for Microsoft Flight Simulator. Many of you may already be somewhat familiar with the add-on, particularly if you're X-Plane users as well. X-Plane Realistic has been around for some time now and is generally very highly regarded amongst the X-Plane community. The FS Realistic application aims to add more immersion into the sim through a series of sound and camera effects. These sorts of effects are often missing in flight simulation and certainly lacking in Microsoft Flight Simulator, often leaving the aircraft feeling a little bit lackluster in terms of feedback. So in today's video we're going to put FS Realistic through its paces and see whether or not we can ramp up our immersion within the sim using the add-on. Currently the program boasts a host of features, including a growing list of 28 sound and vibration effects. Track IR is fully supported, although for the sake of comparison we're not going to be using that during today's flight. VR is also supported in a beta state currently. Third-party add-ons should work with FS Realistic, and the program is extremely FPS friendly, having zero impact on the sim's frame rate. Another nice addition to the program, it's compatible with butt kickers and other transducer devices. It comes with multiple low-frequency sounds, which will hopefully introduce a little bit more vibration through your transducer of choice. FS Realistic also uses a profile cloud system so that users can upload their profiles and then other users can download them accordingly. There are a whole host of effects and adjustable options, we'll look at those in just a moment's time. And certainly well worthy of note, the program actually offers a 7-day free trial, which is really nice to see. I do wish that we'd see that from more developers. Obviously it's always nice to be able to try a product before you buy it. So whatever you make of this review, I would highly recommend you go and download FS Realistic and give it a go. Obviously you have nothing to lose and it's well worth a try. And of course, trying it for yourself, you're going to get a much better feel for the amount of immersion and feedback that the app gives you. Anyway, the program is currently retailing on SimMarket for around €22, and for that money you get around a 350 megabyte download from memory. We'll briefly run through the app and its features, and then we'll take the pits up into the air, and we'll run a flight side by side between the default sim and FS Realistic. And hopefully that should give you a good feel for what the product is all about. As always guys, I do hope you enjoy the video and find it to be of use. If you do, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. If you have any comments or questions for me, you can leave those down in the comment section below. As I say, we'll start off the review by looking at the application itself, and then we'll move on to the more specific effects available. So the FS Realistic application is pretty straightforward to use. As you can see, just a few windows which we can use to configure the program. Worth noting that until you have the sim loaded up and the flight actually running within the sim, you won't see too many options from the application. You do have to be loaded in and ready to fly before you can start to adjust the various settings within the app. We'll come on to the effects last, so starting with the profile window. As you can see, fairly basic options there for loading and downloading profiles for various aircraft. You can see at the bottom there we do have the cloud option for downloading other users' uploaded profiles, and we also have a master switch to turn on and off the application, as well as a reset, so that if you've been adjusting the profiles for yourself and you're not very happy, you can return to a default state very easily. The settings page, again very straightforward. As you can see, we have a master volume slider to adjust the overall level of the various sound effects. We have an auto minimize toggle button as well as an auto start, so FS Realistic can actually start up automatically every time you start up Microsoft Flight Simulator. That's a nice little touch. It saves you forgetting, and of course also saves you one less task when starting up the sim. The application will also announce to you audibly when it's connected to the sim, and again we can toggle that on or off. Lastly, at the bottom you can see we have a couple of options to purchase the program and also to activate it. I'm currently still using the free 7-day trial at the moment, although I do certainly intend to continue using the product. Lastly, we have the About tab giving us the version number of the product that we're currently using, the current license that we have, as well as links to the manual, the product website and various social media websites. As I say, the application is fairly straightforward. Really the meat of the product is the effects, so we'll now move on to the effects tab and we'll briefly run through all of the various effects available within FS Realistic. So the first effect, as you can see, is airframe wind. This will apply a sound effect to the aircraft when manoeuvring. There are various options. As you can see, we have Wind 5 currently selected, and we'll do a preview on the sound just to give you an idea of the sound effect that's applied to the aircraft. In isolation, the sound effect does sound a little bit strange, but it does sound much better once it's actually used in reality. Auto spree brake, that applies a rumble sound. We'll check that out later on. Blade slap is one of the few effects we won't be looking at throughout the flight today. Brakes, that applies a bit of a braking sound effect. It's not entirely realistic, you generally can't hear much in terms of any braking from a big jet, and most of the sounds are a little bit strange, I would say there. Cockpit ambience, I haven't managed to get much in the way of any sounds in the preview, I'm not entirely sure. As you can see, not much to see there at the moment. Crash screaming, a little bit odd, a little bit harrowing. We'll see that again throughout the flight. Engine start. We get some quite nice startup sound effects there, and as you can see again, multiple options. This is where the app really comes into its own. We have various vibration camera options. As you can see, it's actually pretty subtle. Flaps drag. That's just a bit of a rumble caused by the air drag on the flaps. We also get a flaps lever sound effect. We'll look at that more again later on. Flap stress. So again, some nice camera effects there if we stress the flaps with high speed airflow. Float splash, obviously I'm not going to be looking at that just yet, we'll look at that later on. And the same with the gear drag, obviously that applies to aircraft with extendable landing gear. The ground effect sound, again slightly strange, probably one of my least favourite sounds in the sim currently. Again, we'll see more of that as we land the pits later on. And the ground roll, again one of the really nice parts of the app, the vibration there and the camera effects. Landing claps, obviously again that applies to the jet aircraft. You'll get a round of applause if you pull off a nice landing, which of course on the channel we always aim to achieve. Over G, again we'll see that throughout the flight, but some nice camera vibration options there as we pull G in the aircraft. And we also get breathing effects. Some of the breathing effects are good, some not so much. Overspeed, again that's camera effects and sounds associated with overspeeding the aircraft. Reverse thrust, of course, again applying to the jets. Very topical one at the moment. We have a sneezing effect. And of course, should you click on that, you go straight to quarantine. Speed brake drag. Looks to be a Mooney that's modelled there, but we'll take a look at the heavy jets later on. Stall buffet. Again, some nice sounds, some nice camera effects there at the onset of the buffet from the stall. Stick shaker, of course, again applying to the jets. We'll take a look at that later. Touchdown, nice little camera effect there as we touch down. It's going to make pulling off the smooth landings a little bit harder in the sim. Turbulence effects. So a little bit of noise there associated with turbulence. The wheel well, another nice effect there. If you don't touch the brakes after takeoff, then you'll get some vibrations, some sounds there as the wheels spin down in the wheel well. Typically in most big jets there's no brake on the front wheel, so you will get quite a bit of noise as the front wheel retracts. Wind ambience, as you can see, if we open the door on a windy day, we'll get some nice sound effects there. Again, though, not currently hearing any sound effects in the preview. And lastly, windshield noise. A little bit overdone by default, it does get quite loud in some of the jets, but of course one of the nice features of the app is we can turn on or off all of these effects and adjust them accordingly to our liking. Anyway, that just about runs through the available effects from the application, so we'll now put them to the test with a flight in the pits. As I say, it'll be a side-by-side flight, so we'll have the default sim state on the left, we'll use the FS Realistic app on the right, and hopefully that'll give you a good feel as to what sort of additional immersion the FS Realistic app gives you within Microsoft Flight Simulator. So we're now in the cockpit of the Pit Special on the runway and ready to go. Worth noting once again, on the left we have the sim in its default state, and on the right we have the sim with FS Realistic enabled. All of these sounds that you'll hear throughout the flight are FS Realistic sounds. And I won't talk too much throughout the flight, I'll just run through the basics of what we're doing at each stage of the process. Again, so that you can hear the sound effects as clearly as possible. Worth noting here, I've got all of the effects cranked up to the max just to really demonstrate them. Anyway, first thing we'll do is get the engine started. A bit of an anathema here on the channel, but we'll use Control E just to speed things up a little bit. So as you can see, we do get those engine start sound effects. We get a few nice camera vibrations as well as the engine kicks into life. Anyway, we'll come up on the power. Obviously we'll take off straight ahead initially. And again you can see there's a little bit more vibration. We got those sound effects as well as we roll down the runway. Initially we'll climb straight ahead, we'll build up some airspeed, we'll pull a few manoeuvres here just to look at the various camera effects. We'll keep the aircraft more or less straight and level, just building up some speed here to go into a loop initially. So pitching the nose down, just coming through 180 miles an hour, we'll come back on the stick. And you can hear that wind noise there as we pull the loop and the airflow changes over the aircraft. The wind noise does fall off rather quickly there, it's a little bit unrealistic. And we'll just go into a roll now, come back to wings level. Again pitching the aircraft down. This time building up a little bit more speed, we'll go for a full loop. So coming back on the stick. And over the top of the loop, coming off the throttle. And again you can hear that air noise as we come back on the stick and pull some G. Pull some hard G now. There you can hear the pilot breathing effects. These ones I'm not a particular fan of, they're not all that realistic. At least not for someone that's been trained to endure some G-force. Nonetheless, nice to have, and again we get that air noise. We'll go for a stall next, so just pitching the nose up, we'll keep the power on. Speed's coming back just through 80 miles an hour here at the moment. And back through 50 miles an hour. There's the stall warning. You can see the buffeting there, pretty minimal. That was one of the effects though that I did forget to turn up to the max, but again we get some nice buffeting sound effects. So recovering from the stall. Again building up some speed, we'll go into an overspeed now just to look at the effects associated with that. So you can hear we do have a little bit of buffeting there. And pulling up once again. Just putting the aircraft through a couple of slightly more violent manoeuvres now. Not too much in the way of camera effects there. And again, a little bit of buffeting and shuddering there as we carry out the manoeuvring. A little bit of breathing from the pilot. So once again we'll build up a little bit of speed here, just climbing straight ahead. And we'll now pitch the nose down. We're going to overspeed the aircraft a little bit more aggressively than we did last time. We'll also put the aircraft into a near crash state so that we can hear the pilot panicking. So as you can see, the pilot not too happy about that. Again we get the associated air noise and a little bit of buffet from the aircraft. Once again we'll pull some G, bleed off some speed, and we'll head back towards the runway, come in for a landing. Obviously the runway just off to our 11 o'clock, so we'll let the speed bleed back to around 90, 80 miles an hour for now. No flaps on the aircraft, no extendable gear, so we're not going to get to see those effects just yet. We'll look at those in a moment's time. We'll also take a look at the associated float plane effects. Getting ourselves turned on to final. Pretty poor visibility in the pit, so we'll just side slip the aircraft slightly here just to keep sight of the runway. And of course really all we're looking for here is the touchdown effects as we land. Anyway, just centering up the controls, we'll hold the aircraft off. We do end up floating quite a bit down the runway here. And you can hear that landing wind noise now, which I find a little bit strange. I'll probably tone that down a bit when I come to adjust the options for myself. Anyway, there's touchdown. Again, you can see a little bit of a bump there, but we do get the associated camera vibrations. Some nice ground roll sounds as well. And that's really where the app for me shines. It's with the various camera effects and the associated rumbles and vibrations in the cockpit. Anyway, bring the aircraft to a stop, onto the brakes. As I say, we'll take a look at a couple more of the effects that we've yet to see. We'll now head for the Cub and Cub. We'll do a little bit of float plane flying, and then finally we'll move on to the 747-8. And we'll take a look at some of the jet aircraft sound effects. So now in the Carbon Cub, very simple profile here. We're just going to come up on the power. We'll fly straight ahead. You'll see the various float effects and sounds there. And then we'll come back round on a 180 for a landing. Again, just to look at the effects of the floats. So you can see we do get a little bit more bouncing here now on the floats, I believe, than is standard in the sim, which is nice to see. And of course you can hear the associated sound effects. Anyway, getting the aircraft airborne. As I say, we'll just swing through 180 and we'll come back for a landing. So coming through 180, coming back off the power, we'll take the flaps. You might just about be able to hear the associated flap drag sounds there as well. So full flap. Off the power, holding the aircraft off.
Gears up for water landing. Gears up for water landing.
There's touchdown. Again, we do get a little bit more bouncy on the floats. I would say though that the aircraft gets a little bit carried away in terms of the bounce. Again, you should be able to tone that down with the associated tab in the effects options. But overall it certainly adds a little bit more dynamism to float plane flying within the sim, which again is really nice to see.
Gears up for water landing.
And lastly, we're now on board the 747-8. So we'll first select flaps 1. You can hear that flaps effect sound. Really more of a bowing sound effect there, but nice to have nonetheless. And as the flaps come out, you should be able to hear the increase in air noise there. We'll come back to 180 on the speed, just so we can keep taking the flaps. We'll take the speed brake. You can hear we do get a nice bit of rumble there with the speed brakes extended, and of course you can see a little bit of camera effect there as well. We'll stay the speed brake once again, we'll keep taking the flaps. And we'll take the gear. Some of the effects are quite subtle. Initially you won't hear much noise from the gear, but you'll hear that start to come in. So again, you can hear the drag now on the gear, a little bit of rattling and shaking there as well. And the last effect we'll look at, we'll just disconnect the autopilot, we'll pitch up. Basically going to put the aircraft into a low speed event or potentially a stall, and we'll hear the stick shaker sound effects. So you can hear the stick shaker there. Again, a nice little touch, just adds that little bit more immersion to the jet. Anyway, we'll pitch down and we'll recover. And that just about wraps up the flying segment of the review. As I say, the only effect we're not really going to get to look at today is the blade slap effect for the helicopters. Anyway, we'll now move on to my overall conclusions and opinions on the product. So there you go guys, I hope you enjoyed our look at FS Realistic, and hopefully the video and the flights have given you an idea of what the product is all about. Overall I have to say I rather enjoyed the product. I think it's a very nice addition to the sim. It certainly does what it sets out to achieve. Firstly, in terms of the price, €22 I think is fair for the product. I think it's certainly at the higher end of what I'd be willing to pay for it. But it does put it on a par with various other add-ons of this nature that we've seen in other sims. It is a little bit of a shame that we have to buy a third-party add-on to add this sort of functionality into a modern sim such as Microsoft Flight Simulator, but in fairness both X-Plane and P3D also require third-party add-ons to have the same functionality. As I mentioned during the introduction, it's certainly a program that I plan on continuing to use within Microsoft Flight Simulator, as it does add quite a bit to the sim. I think both in terms of the feedback and immersion on my end, and hopefully for you guys watching as well. For me, the real forte of the app, and of course it is the real foundation of what FS Realistic is designed to do, the camera effects certainly ramp up the immersion, the vibrations and the shudders from the aircraft really make the whole thing feel a lot more alive. Some of the sound effects are really nice as well, they certainly do a good job. There are others which I find are a little bit more hit and miss at the moment. Overall, I think that FS Realistic is a really nice little addition to the sim. As I say, it achieves what it sets out to do. And I think, like me, if you go and give the application a go, you'll find yourself missing it very shortly thereafter if you don't continue to use it. Once again, FS Realistic comes with a free 7-day trial, which I think is really great from the developers. A big thank you to them for doing that. So the best I can recommend is to go and give the application a go for yourselves, see what you think. The developer does also state that the list of effects should grow going forward, so it'll be really interesting to see what FS Realistic adds to the sim in the future. Anyway, in summary, FS Realistic, a very nice addition to the sim. It certainly helps to ramp up the immersion and add some otherwise sorely missing camera effects to Microsoft Flight Simulator. At its current price point, I think it's a decent purchase, but once again I would implore you to go and download it for yourselves, give it a try and see what you think. Once again guys, I do hope you enjoyed the video and found it to be of use. If you did, please consider giving the video a like. If you want to see more content from the channel, then please consider subscribing as well. Of course that really helps the channel to grow. If you have any comments or questions for me, you can leave those down in the comment section below, and as ever I'll try and do my best to answer them. Once again, a very big thank you to my channel members and patrons for all of your support, always hugely appreciated. Take really good care guys, I hope you're having a great day wherever you are, and I will see you all again soon.